My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon. 2 weeks ago, I thought I knew who my mother was. I thought I understood why my father left when I was 8. I thought the worst thing about dealing with her death would be sorting through her old apartment. I was wrong about everything. What I found in that abandoned motel, what I discovered about my own family, it's changed me forever. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I jump every time someone knocks on my door. And if you're listening to this, if you make it to the end of what I'm about to tell you, you're going to understand why. Because some secrets are so dark, they poison everything they touch, including the people who discover them. Mom died on a Thursday morning. Heart attack at 64. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since our last fight about her drinking, her isolation, her refusal to get help for anything. She lived alone in a studio apartment in Salem, working part-time at a gas station, barely scraping by. At least, that's what I thought. The funeral was small. Just me, her landlord, and a social worker who'd been checking on her. Afterwards, her lawyer handed me an envelope I wasn't expecting. Inside were keys and a deed to property I'd never heard of. The Sunset Motel, the lawyer said, showing me faded photographs. Your mother inherited it from her sister about 10 years ago. It's been closed since 2011. I stared at the pictures. A rundown roadside motel with a cracked neon sign and weeds growing to the parking lot. 2 stories, maybe 20 rooms, with a small office building attached. She never mentioned it. I said, your mother was very private. She visited the property once or twice a year, just to check on things. Said she was planning to sell it eventually. A developer had already expressed interest in buying the land. All I had to do was document the property's condition for insurance purposes. Take some photos, write a report, collect a decent payout. Easy money. A chance to finally close the book on my relationship with my mother. God, I wish I just sold it sight unseen. The drive out to the motel took me through parts of Oregon I'd never seen before. Highway 22, winding through forest and farmland, getting more isolated by the mile. When I finally saw the Sunset Motel sign, half the letters were dark, and the other half flickered weakly in the afternoon sun. The parking lot was a mess of potholes and weeds. A few abandoned shopping carts sat scattered around like modern art installations. The building itself was worse than the photos suggested. Peeling paint, broken windows, and a smell that hit me even before I got out of my car. It wasn't just mildew and rot. It was something else. Something organic and wrong. I parked near the office and sat there for a minute, just looking at the place. The silence was complete. No traffic, no birds, no wind. Just dead quiet, like the world had forgotten this place existed. I grabbed my camera and the keys and walked to the office door. The glass was spiderweb with cracks, but I could see inside. An old reception desk, some chairs, a computer that looked like it was from the 1990s. The key turned easily, too easily, like it had been used recently. The smell hit me full force when I opened the door. That same organic rot, but stronger now. I covered my nose with my sleeve and stepped inside. The office was small and cluttered. Paper scattered across the desk. A coffee mug with something growing in it. A calendar on the wall, still showing March 2011. But something was off. The dust patterns were wrong. Some areas were clean, like someone had been moving things around. I started taking pictures for the insurance report, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That someone had been here recently. Maybe was still here. That's when I noticed the door behind the reception desk. It was slightly open, and I could see stairs leading down into darkness. I should have left. Should have finished taking my photos and gotten out of there. But something about that door, standing open like an invitation, made me curious. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The stairs were wooden and creaked under my weight. The smell got stronger as I went down. At the bottom was a small basement room with concrete walls and a low ceiling. It looked like it had been set up as some kind of storage area. But it wasn't storage boxes I found down there. It was a workspace, a desk with a computer, photo development equipment, and filing cabinets lined up against the walls. Everything was covered in dust, but not as much as it should have been after 10 years. I walked over to the desk and found stacks of papers, guest registration forms, credit card receipts, rental agreements, all dated 2011 and earlier. Normal motel paperwork, except for one thing. A lot of the guests had paid in cash. A lot of them had checked in alone, and a lot of them had only stayed one night. I opened one of the filing cabinets. Inside were manila folders, each labeled with room number and date. I pulled out a random folder, Room 7, August 2010, and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all Polaroids, all showing the same person. A young woman, maybe early 20s, with long brown hair. The first few photos showed her checking into the motel, carrying a backpack, looking tired but normal. Then the photos got weird. They showed her in the motel room, but taken from outside the window, like someone had been watching her. Photos of her unpacking, changing clothes, taking a shower, all without her knowledge. My hand started shaking. I dropped the folder and grabbed another one. Room 12, June 2011. A young man this time. Same pattern. Normal check-in photos, then surveillance shots taken through windows. But these photos went further. They showed him unconscious on the bed, clearly drugged. And the final photos in the folder showed the room empty, like he'd never been there at all. I backed away from the filing cabinet, my heart pounding. I needed to get out of there. I needed to call the police. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Another filing cabinet, this one locked. But the key was sitting right there on the desk, like someone had been expecting me to find it. I unlocked the cabinet and found more folders. But these weren't labeled with room numbers. They were labeled with names. And one of them had my father's name on it. My father's name was Michael. He'd left when I was 8, and my mother always said he'd run off with another woman. Said he couldn't handle being a father, couldn't handle the responsibility. I'd spent my whole life thinking he'd abandoned us. But the folder with his name told a different story. Inside were documents in his handwriting, notes, photocopied police reports, and photographs. The notes were dated 2011, the same year the motel closed, the same year my father disappeared. They're not just taking pictures, one note said. They're taking people. Young travelers, mostly. People who won't be missed right away. Another note. Margaret is involved. My own wife. She's been helping them for years. I don't know how I missed it. Margaret, my mother's name. The documents painted a picture I didn't want to believe. The Sunset Motel had been a front for something much worse than voyeurism. Young people would check in, runaways, hitchhikers, travelers who paid cash and didn't leave much of a paper trail. They'd be drugged, photographed, and then disappeared. My father had figured it out. He'd been investigating, collecting evidence, building a case. He'd even contacted the FBI. But he'd made a mistake. He confronted my mother about it. I found his final note, written in increasingly desperate handwriting. Margaret knows I found everything. She knows I talked to the FBI. She's not the woman I married. Maybe she never was. If something happens to me, look in the basement. The evidence is all there. Tell Sarah I love her. The note was dated March 15th, 2011. According to the police report I found, my father had disappeared on March 16th. I sat there in that basement, surrounded by evidence of unimaginable crimes, and realized that my mother hadn't been a victim of abandonment. She'd been a perpetrator. And my father hadn't left us. He'd been murdered for trying to save people. I kept digging through the files, even though every new piece of evidence made me sick. The operation was bigger than just a motel. There were client lists, financial records, communication logs. The Sunset Motel had been part of a network that stretched across multiple states. Young people would be collected at places like this, then transported to buyers who had specific requirements. The Polaroids weren't just trophies. They were catalog photos. I found shipping manifests disguised as supply orders, payment records disguised as maintenance expenses, and photographs of people I didn't recognize, all wearing the same kind of uniform. Staff members, maybe, or security. But the most horrifying thing I found was a ledger, a careful record of inventory, and sales going back years. Each entry had a description, age, hair color, physical characteristics, and a price. These monsters have been selling human beings like merchandise. The entry stopped abruptly in March 2011, right around the time my father disappeared and the motel closed. But as I looked through the most recent files, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The handwriting in the later entries wasn't my mother's. It was someone else's. Someone who'd been running the operation even after the motel closed. And some of the dates were recent, like within the last few months recent. I was looking at evidence of active crimes. People were still disappearing, still being sold. And whoever was running things now knew about this place, knew about the evidence stored here. That's when I heard footsteps upstairs. I froze listening. Someone was walking around in the office above me. Slow, deliberate steps, like they were looking for something, or someone. I turned off my phone's flashlight and crouched behind the desk. Maybe if I stayed quiet, they'd leave. Maybe they were just checking on the place, like my mother used to do. But then I heard a voice that made my blood turn to ice. "Sarah, I know you're down there, honey." It was my mother's voice, but that was impossible. My mother was dead. I'd seen her body. I'd been to her funeral. "Your car's outside, sweetheart, and I can see your footprints in the dust. You always were a curious little girl." The footsteps started moving toward the basement door. I looked around desperately for another exit, but there was only one way out. Through the office, through whoever was up there. "I knew you'd come here eventually," the voice continued. "Knew you'd find the files, just like your daddy did." The footsteps were on the stairs now. I could see a flashlight beam moving down the walls. In the light, I caught a glimpse of the person carrying it. It was my mother. Same face, same hair, same clothes I'd seen her wear 1,000 times. But she was supposed to be dead. "Hello, Sarah," she said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "We need to talk." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mother was standing there, alive, in a basement full of evidence that she'd been helping to kidnap and sell people. "I know you have questions," she said, settling into a chair like we were having a normal conversation. "I know you found her father's files. I know you think I'm some kind of monster. You're supposed to be dead," I whispered. She smiled, and it was the same smile she'd given me when I was little. Warm and loving and completely wrong for the situation. I had to die, honey. The FBI was getting too close. Too many people asking questions. It was easier to just disappear. My mother, or the woman who looked exactly like my mother, sat there in that basement and explained everything. How she'd faked her death with help from people in the network. How she'd been living under a different name, continuing to run the operation from a new location. How she'd been waiting for me to find this place. "You see, Sarah, this is a family business. It's been in our family for generations. My mother did it. Her mother did it. It's how we survived, how we've thrived. I found my voice. You're selling people. You're destroying lives. I'm providing a service," she said calmly. "There are people with specific needs, specific desires, and there are people who nobody will miss. Runaways, addicts, drifters. I'm just bringing them together. What about Dad? What about the people who tried to stop you?" Her expression hardened. "Your father was weak. He couldn't see the bigger picture. He was willing to destroy our family, put you in danger for the sake of people who were already lost." She stood up and walked over to the filing cabinet where I'd found his folder. "I loved him, Sarah, but he was going to ruin everything. The FBI was already sniffing around, and if he testified..." She shrugged. I couldn't let that happen. So you killed him. I protected our family. I protected you. Do you think your college education paid for itself? Do you think your apartment, your car, your comfortable life just happened? I thought about my childhood, about how my mother had always seemed to have enough money despite working low-paying jobs, about the checks she'd sent me during college, the down payment she'd helped me make on my first apartment. Everything you have came from this business, she continued. You've been living off it your whole life, which makes you complicit, whether you like it or not. She was right, and that realization hit me like a physical blow. Every birthday present, every Christmas gift, every opportunity I'd had, all of it paid for with blood money. But that's not why I brought you here, she said. I brought you here because I'm getting old. I need someone to take over, someone I can trust, someone who understands the value of family. I stared at her, horrified. You want to join you. I want you to inherit what's yours. This business has supported our family for decades. It could support your children, their children. All you have to do is say yes. That's when I realized something that changed everything. The whole thing had been a setup. My mother's death, the lawyer, the inheritance, all of it designed to get me here to this moment. But she'd made one mistake. She'd assumed I'd be willing to become what she was. I need time to think, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother smiled. Of course you do. This is a big decision. But Sarah, honey, you need to understand something. You can't leave here knowing what you know. You're either with us or you're a problem. And we don't let problems walk away. She pulled something from her purse. A small bottle and a syringe. This is what we used on your father. Very peaceful. He just went to sleep. I looked around the basement, desperate for anything I could use to defend myself. But my mother was between me and the stairs. The only way out was through her. I don't want to hurt you, she said, preparing the syringe. But I can't let you destroy everything we've built. If you won't join the family business, then you'll have to join your father. That's when I remembered something. My phone. I'd been recording voice memos to help me remember details for the insurance report. The app was still running. Everything my mother had said, every confession, every admission of guilt, it was all being recorded. I understand, I said, taking a step toward her. I understand why you did it, why you had to do it. She relaxed slightly. I knew you would. You're my daughter. You're smart. But I need to ask you something first. The people you've taken over the years. How many? She smiled, proud of her accomplishments. Hundreds, maybe thousands. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And they're all dead? Not all. Some are still working, but they're not the people they used to be. They've been broken, trained, made useful. I took another step closer. And you're still doing it? Even now? Of course. The demand never stops. In fact, business has been better than ever. Social media makes it so easy to find the right type of person. Young people post their whole lives online. Their locations, their plans, their vulnerabilities. It's like they're advertising themselves. I was close enough now. Close enough to grab the syringe if I moved fast enough. And what about the police? The FBI? We own enough of them that it doesn't matter. Money talks, Sarah, and we have a lot of money. I lunged the syringe. My mother was faster than I expected, but I managed to knock it out of her hand. It shattered on the concrete floor. Sarah, stop, she shouted. You don't understand what you're doing. But I was already running up the stairs. Behind me, I could hear her on the phone, talking to someone. She's running. Yes, she found everything. No, she won't join us. I burst through the office and ran to my car. The keys were in my pocket, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get them in the ignition. In the rear view mirror, I saw my mother standing in the doorway. She wasn't chasing me because she didn't need to. She was calmly talking on her phone, giving instructions to someone. The engine started and I floored it. But as I drove away, I realized something that made my blood run cold. She let me go. She let me escape with the recording, which meant she wasn't worried about what I'd do with it. I drove straight to the FBI field office in Portland. The whole way there, I kept checking my phone to make sure the recording was still intact. It was 2 hours of audio, including my mother's full confession. When I got to the FBI building, I walked in and asked to speak to someone about a human trafficking case. The receptionist looked skeptical until I mentioned the Sunset Motel and started playing the recording. Suddenly, everyone was very interested. They put me in a conference room with 3 agents. I told them everything about the motel, the basement, the files, my mother's confession. They listened to the entire recording, taking notes, asking questions. But something was wrong. I could see it in their faces. They weren't surprised enough. They weren't shocked enough by what I was telling them. Ms. Chun, one of the agents, said finally, "We appreciate you coming forward with this information, but we need you to understand something. Your mother died 2 weeks ago. We have the death certificate, the cremation records, the funeral director's statement." "That's impossible," I said. "I just talked to her. I have her confession on tape. We believe you encountered someone impersonating your mother, someone who knew about your family history, and used it to manipulate you." I stared at them. "You're not going to investigate?" "We'll look into it, of course. But without physical evidence, without bodies, there's not much we can do. The motel you described burned down in 2011. There's nothing left but a foundation. What about the basement? The files? We'll send a team to check, but I wouldn't get your hopes up. These types of operations are very good at cleaning up after themselves." I left the FBI building feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. They didn't believe me. Or worse, they believed me but didn't care. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. But when I got there, I found something that made me realize how much danger I was really in. My front door was open, and sitting on my kitchen table was a manila folder with my name on it. Inside the folder were Polaroid photographs. All of me, taken over the past several months without my knowledge. Me leaving my apartment, me at work, me at the grocery store. Someone had been watching me for a long time, and at the bottom of the stack was a note in my mother's handwriting. "Sarah, I'm disappointed you chose your father's path, but I understand. Some people are too weak for this business. The photos are just to show you that we're always watching, always waiting. If you ever change your mind, if you ever want to join the family business, just leave a red scarf in your apartment window. We'll be in touch." Nam. I called the FBI immediately. They came to my apartment, took the photos, dusted for fingerprints. They found nothing. No evidence of who had been in my apartment. No way to trace the photos. But they did find something else. In my closet, behind some old clothes, was a box I'd never seen before. Inside were more documents. Financial records showing payments made to me over the years. Money that had been deposited into my accounts. Money I'd thought was from my mother's jobs. Money that had actually come from the trafficking operation. The FBI agent looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "Ms. Chun, according to these records, you've been receiving payments from this organization for over 10 years. Are you sure you didn't know about your mother's activities?" I stared at the documents. Every deposit, every payment, every gift my mother had given me, all of it traceable back to the network. I didn't know. I whispered. I swear I didn't know. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Had there been signs I'd ignored? Questions I'd never asked? Red flags I chose not to see? The agent closed the file. "We'll continue investigating. But I have to be honest with you. Cases like this are very difficult to prosecute. The network is sophisticated, well-funded, and they have people in positions of power. Even if we could prove your mother was involved, she's dead. The trail ends with her." After they left, I sat in my apartment staring at the walls. Everything I owned, everything I had built my life on, was contaminated. I was contaminated. But the worst part was the doubt. The creeping suspicion that maybe, somewhere deep down, I had known. Maybe I'd chosen not to ask questions because I didn't want to know the answers. Maybe I was more like my mother than I wanted to admit. It's been 2 weeks since I found the photos of my apartment. 2 weeks since I learned the truth about my family. The FBI closed their investigation. No charges were filed. No arrests were made. Officially, nothing happened. But I know the truth. I know what my mother was. I know what she did to my father. And I know that somewhere out there, the network is still operating, still taking people, still destroying lives. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to process everything I've learned. She says it's normal to feel guilty, normal to question everything about your past. She says I'm not responsible for my mother's crimes. But I can't shake the feeling that I am responsible for benefiting from them, for not asking questions, for being willfully blind to the source of my comfortable life. I've been thinking about the note my mother left, about the red scarf, about what would happen if I put it in my window. Would they really contact me? Would they really let me join the family business? And if they did, would I be strong enough to say no? I tell myself that of course I would. That I could never become what my mother was, that I have my father's moral strength, his willingness to do the right thing even when it's dangerous. But late at night, when I'm lying in bed thinking about my student loans and my rent and my credit card debt, I find myself wondering. The network pays well, very well, and they're always looking for new talent. People with clean backgrounds, people who can blend in, people who know how to stay quiet, people like me. Last night, I bought a red scarf. It's sitting in my dresser drawer right now, still in the bag from the store. I tell myself I'm never going to use it. I tell myself I'm better than that, but I haven't thrown it away. And every time I look at my bills, every time I think about my uncertain future, I think about that scarf, about how easy it would be to just hang it in the window, about how easy it would be to become what my mother always wanted me to be. The worst part is, I'm starting to understand why she did it, why she made the choices she made. When you're desperate, when you're scared, when you don't see any other way out, it's amazing how quickly your moral boundaries can shift. It's amazing how quickly you can become someone you never thought you'd be. I'm not going to put the scarf in the window. I'm not going to contact the network. I'm not going to become my mother, but I'm keeping the scarf, just in case. Because that's what family is for, right? To give you options when you don't have any left. To give you a way out when the world becomes too much to bear, even if that way out leads straight to hell. Look, I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking when I tell you this story. But I need to get it out there, you know? Because if something happens to me, if I just disappear one day, at least someone will know what really went down in that building. My name's Alex, and I've been doing urban exploration for about 5 years now. Started in college, just me and my camera, checking out abandoned places around Bangkok. Nothing crazy, old shopping malls, empty office buildings, that kind of thing. I run a small YouTube channel, maybe 3,000 subscribers. Not exactly making bank, but it pays for my gear and keeps me fed. 3 weeks ago, I found something that changed everything. And I mean everything. Because what I discovered in that penthouse, it wasn't just abandoned. It was being used. And now I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. So here's how it started. I was scrolling through property listings online. Yeah, I know, weird hobby. But sometimes you find buildings that are about to be demolished, and that's prime exploration territory. Most of the time, it's just regular stuff. But this one listing caught my eye. It was for a penthouse in this high-rise in the Asylum District. Not the fancy part. This was one of those buildings that went up during construction boom, and then got abandoned when the developers ran out of money. You know the type? Half finished. Windows boarded up, security fencing around the base. But here's the thing that made me stop scrolling. The listing was for a penthouse on the 30th floor. The building only had 25 floors. I'd been past it dozens of times, and I was sure about that. So either this was a typo or someone was listing a property that didn't exist. The price was weird too, way too cheap for a penthouse, even in that area. And the photos were strange, just empty rooms, but they looked too clean for an abandoned building. The walls were fresh white, the floors were spotless. It looked like someone had just finished renovating it. I tried calling the number on the listing, but it went straight to voicemail. Some guy with a heavy accent. Couldn't really place it. The message was just leave details. I call back. Real professional, right? I figured it was probably some kind of scam, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. See, that's the thing about urban exploration. Once you get curious about a place, it's like an itch you can't scratch. You have to know what's really going on. So I decided to check it out for myself. The next evening, I grabbed my usual gear, camera, flashlight, crowbar, first aid kit, and headed over to the building. It was one of those humid Bangkok nights where the air feels like it's sticking to your skin. The building was in this weird part of Asylum where half the shops are closed and the other half are, well, let's just say they cater to a specific clientele. Getting into the building was easier than I expected. The security fence had a gap near the back, and the main entrance was just boarded up with plywood. A few minutes with the crowbar, and I was in. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors cracked and dirty. Dead plants and concrete planters. That musty smell of a place that's been closed up too long. But here's what was weird. The elevator was working. Not just powered on, but actually functional. The buttons lit up when I pressed them. I figured the building still had power for security or maintenance, so I didn't think much of it. I pressed the button for the 25th floor, planning to take the stairs up to the roof and see if there was some kind of hidden structure up there. But when the doors opened on 25, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was another elevator, a freight elevator, hidden behind a false wall that had been pulled aside, and next to it, a sign in Thai and English, penthouse access, authorized personnel only. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes, just staring at that sign, because suddenly the listing made sense. There was a penthouse. It was hidden, unauthorized, and someone had been using it. The smart thing would have been to leave right then. But like I said, curiosity kills a cat, and I've never been smart when it comes to abandoned places. I took the freight elevator up. The freight elevator was slow, ancient. It creaked and groaned as it climbed, and I started to wonder if maybe this was a mistake. But then the doors opened and I stepped into, well, it looked like a normal apartment hallway. Clean carpet, painted walls, even those little emergency lighting fixtures. There was only one door at the end of the hall, and it was slightly open, just a crack, but enough that I could see light coming from inside. Not electric light, something flickering, like candles. I pulled out my camera and started recording. Force of habit, you know? Plus, if something happened to me, at least there'd be evidence. The apartment was beautiful. I mean, really beautiful. Hardwood floors, expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the whole city. But here's the thing. It was clearly being lived in. Recent takeout containers on the counter, a laptop plugged in and charging, clothes hanging in the closet, but no one was home. I called out a few times, just in case. Hello? Anyone here? Nothing. So I started exploring. The kitchen was fully stocked. Expensive wine, imported cheese, the kind of stuff you'd find in a 5-star hotel. The refrigerator was full of fresh food, and there was a note stuck to the door with a magnet. It was in English, but the handwriting was childish, almost. It said, "Thank you for the lovely evening. M." That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint, but once you catch it, you can't ignore it. Something chemical like bleach, but underneath that, something organic. Something that made my stomach turn. I followed the smell to the bedroom. The bedroom was where things got really wrong. And I mean really, really wrong. The bed was made, but there were restraints attached to the headboard. Not kinky bedroom stuff. I'm talking about actual restraints, the kind you'd use on someone who didn't want to be there. The smell was stronger here, and I could see why. There were stains on the carpet that someone had tried to clean, but hadn't quite managed to get out. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the wall. The entire wall opposite the bed was covered in photographs. Polaroids, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All of women. All of them looked terrified. Some were just headshots. Women with tape over their mouths, eyes wide with fear. Others were, well, I won't describe them in detail, but they were clearly taken against these women's will. The most recent one still had that glossy look of fresh Polaroids. And here's the thing that made my hands shake as I held the camera. Some of these women looked familiar. Not personally familiar, but I'd seen missing person posters around the city, pictures in the news, women who'd disappeared over the past year. I started taking photos of the wall with my phone, trying to document as much as I could, but then I heard something that made me freeze. The elevator. Someone was coming up. I quickly turned off my camera and looked around for somewhere to hide. There was a walk-in closet. So I ducked inside and pulled the door almost closed, leaving just a crack so I could see. The apartment door opened, and two men walked in. One was Thai, maybe in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit. The other was white, older, with graying hair and the kind of soft face that comes from a life of comfort and privilege. They were speaking in English, and I could hear every word. "The new girl arrives tomorrow," the white man was saying. "Make sure the room is prepared. Fresh sheets, clean restraints, and get rid of those old photos. We're running out of wall space." The Thai man nodded. "What about the real estate listing? People are still calling." "Good. Keep it up. The more responses we get, the more choices we have. Just make sure they're suitable." That's when I understood. The fake listing wasn't a scam. It was bait. They were using it to lure women up here. Women who thought they were viewing an apartment. Women who disappeared. I was so focused on their conversation that I didn't notice the closet door had creaked open a little more. Not until the white man stopped talking and looked directly at me. "We have a visitor," he said calmly. The Thai man pulled out a gun. Not a little pistol, but a serious weapon, the kind that makes holes you don't come back from. "Come out slowly," he said in accented English, "hands where I can see them." I came out of the closet with my hands up, camera still in one hand. The white man looked at me with this expression of mild annoyance, like I was a bug that had wandered into his house. "Urban explorer," he said, looking at my gear. "YouTube channel. Probably, what's your subscriber count?" I was so scared I could barely speak. 3,000. He laughed. "Well, that's disappointing. I was hoping for someone with more reach." He looked at the Thai man. "Check his camera." The Thai man took my camera and started going through the footage. He recorded everything, he said. The apartment, the photos, our conversation. Of course he did. The white man sat down in an armchair, completely relaxed. That's what they do. Document everything. Share it with the world. Very noble in a way. He was talking about me like I wasn't even there. Like I was already dead. "Here's what's going to happen," he continued. "You're going to delete everything you recorded. You're going to forget you were ever here. And then you're going to leave and never come back. And if I don't," he gestured to the wall of photos, "then you'll have a much closer understanding of what happened to these women." I deleted the footage from my camera. What choice did I have? But here's the thing. I had my phone in my pocket, and it had been recording audio the whole time. They never checked it. They let me go, actually walked me to the elevator, made sure I got out of the building safely. The white man even shook my hand. "Pleasure meeting you," he said. "I do hope we don't see each other again." I went home and didn't sleep for 3 days. I should have gone to the police. I know that, but who was going to believe me? Some urban explorer with a story about a hidden penthouse and a wall full of photos? Without evidence. It was just my word against, well, against people who clearly had resources and connections. So I did what I always do when something bothers me. I went online. I posted about it anonymously on a few urban exploration forums. Didn't mention the location, didn't use any names, just described what I'd seen. Said I was looking for advice on what to do. The response was immediate. Dozens of messages from people who'd seen similar things. Other urban explorers who'd found rooms that didn't belong, spaces that were being used for things that shouldn't happen. But here's the pattern. Every single person who tried to expose these places had eventually stopped posting. Their accounts went dead, their profiles disappeared. And then I got a private message. No username, just a string of numbers. It said, "We know who you are. We know where you live. Delete your post." I did. I deleted everything. But it was too late, because 2 days later, I started noticing things. A van parked outside my apartment building. The same man in the coffee shop, where I work on my laptop. Someone had been in my apartment while I was out. Nothing stolen. But things moved just slightly, enough to let me know they'd been there. I tried to act normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then last week, I got another message. This time it was just an address and a time. The address was a different building, but I recognized the format of the listing. Another penthouse that didn't exist. The message ended with, "Bring your camera. I haven't gone. I'm not going to go, but I can't stop thinking about it, because I realized something about that wall of photos. The women in them, they weren't just victims. They were bait. See, the real estate listing was just the beginning. These men, they have a system. They find women who are vulnerable, who are looking for housing, who won't immediately be missed. They lure them to the penthouse with promises of a cheap apartment in a good location. And then, but here's the thing I can't get out of my head. The white man knew about urban exploration. He knew about YouTube channels and subscriber counts. He wasn't just preying on women looking for apartments. He was looking for content creators, people with audiences, people like me. I think the plan was always to let me go, to let me post about what I'd seen, to build buzz and mystery around the penthouse. Because what's the first thing people do when they hear about a creepy abandoned place? They want to see it for themselves. I think I was supposed to be the bait. My story, my post, my audience, it was all supposed to draw more people to that building, more potential victims. And here's the worst part. By making this video, by telling you this story, I might be doing exactly what they wanted. If you're listening to this, if you're thinking about looking for that building, about trying to find that penthouse, don't. Please, just don't. Because I've been getting more messages, more addresses, more invitations to bring my camera. And yesterday, I found a new photo slipped under my door. A Polaroid of me, taken from across the street. I'm looking right at the camera, but I don't remember seeing anyone there. On the back, someone had written, "Thank you for the lovely evening. M." I don't know who M is. I don't know how they got that close to me, without me noticing. But I think I'm going to find out soon. If you don't hear from me again, well, you'll know why. And whatever you do, don't look for that building. Don't try to find that penthouse. Because I'm starting to think it might be looking for you too. You know that feeling when you realize you've made a mistake that's going to change everything? Like that exact moment when your brain catches up to what's happening and you just know that you're fucked? I'm Caleb, and I used to run a YouTube channel called Urban Echoes with my best friend Jake. We explore abandoned places around Europe, old factories, empty hospitals, forgotten subway stations. Nothing too crazy. Just the kind of stuff that gets decent views from people who like that urban exploration vibe. 3 months ago, we went to Berlin to check out an old metro station called Station 32. It was supposed to be sealed up since the 80s. Just another Cold War relic collecting dust underground. What we found down there, man, I still can't sleep properly. And Jake never came home. So we've been planning this Berlin trip for months. Jake was obsessed with the Station 32 place. He found some old forum posts about it, grainy photos, the usual urban explorer breadcrumbs. The station was part of the old East Berlin metro system, apparently shut down after some kind of structural damage back in '87. Dude, look at this. Jake showed me his laptop screen in our crappy hostel room. Nobody's been down there in years. We could be the first to properly document it. I was scrolling through the forum thread he'd found. Typical stuff. Blurry photos of rusty turnstiles, graffiti-covered walls, that underground smell you can practically feel through the screen. But something felt off about the whole thing. Like, the photos were too clean, you know? Too staged. I don't know, man, I said, but Jake was already packing his camera gear. This feels like bait. Bait for what? It's just an old train station. Famous last word, right? We took the U-Bahn to the closest stop and walked about 15 minutes through the sketchy industrial area. Lots of old warehouses, broken windows, that kind of post-communist decay that Berlin does so well. The entrance was supposed to be through a maintenance door behind a defunct grocery store. And there it was, this heavy metal door with about 6 different verboten signs plastered all over it. Classic German efficiency, even for keeping people out of places they shouldn't be. Jake had his bolt cutters ready. You recording? I hit record on my phone. Yeah, we're live. Well, not live live, but you know what I mean. The lock was old, rusty. Cut through it like butter. That should have been red flag number 1. Why would a 30-year-old lock be so easy to break? The door opened onto this narrow concrete staircase going straight down. The air that hit us was wrong. Not just stale or musty, but like it had been recycled through something unclean. Jake went first with his big camera. I followed with my phone and a backup flashlight. Jesus, it's deep. Jake's voice echoed weird in the stairwell. How far down is this thing? We counted steps as we went. 56 steps down, then this long, tiled corridor that looked like every other abandoned subway station you've ever seen. Except for the smell. It was getting stronger the deeper we went. Not decay exactly, but something organic, like unwashed bodies and fierce sweat. You getting this? Jake was filming everything, his camera light bouncing off the old propaganda posters still stuck to the walls. This is incredible, man. Look at this stuff. The main platform was huge, bigger than we expected. 2 sets of tracks disappearing into black tunnels on either side. Ancient wooden benches, some still bolted to the floor, others scattered around like someone had been using them more recently than 1987. That's when we saw the lights. Down the left tunnel. Maybe 100 meters in, there was this flickering. Not like firelight or anything dramatic, just regular fluorescent lights. The kind you'd see in any office building. But they were strobing on and off in this weird rhythm. Dude, I grabbed Jake's arm. There's no power down here. This place has been dead for decades. Jake was already walking toward the tunnel. That's why we need to check it out. Maybe there's a generator or something. Or maybe we should get the fuck out of here. But you know how it is. The camera was rolling. The content was good. And neither of us wanted to be the guy who chickened out. So we went deeper. The tunnel curved to the right after about 50 meters. And that's where the sound started. This low, mechanical humming, like industrial equipment running somewhere in the distance. Not loud, but constant. The kind of sound that gets inside your head and stays there. You hear that? I whispered. Jake nodded, but he was still filming. Always filming. Probably just ventilation or something. Old buildings make weird noises. The flickering lights were getting brighter as we got closer, and I could see they were coming from a side room carved out of the tunnel wall. The entrance was partially blocked by a hanging sheet of plastic, the kind they use at construction sites. Jake pushed through first, and I heard him stop dead. What the hell? I followed him through the plastic, and my brain just stopped working for a second. The room was set up like a security office. Bank of old CRT monitors, cables running everywhere, the smell of electronics, and something else. Something human. Most of the monitors were dead, but 3 were still running, showing different camera angles of the tunnels we just walked through. This is recent, Jake said, checking the timestamp on the screens. Look at this setup. Someone's been using this place. I was looking at the monitors, trying to figure out what I was seeing. The footage was grainy, black and white, but you could clearly see 2 figures walking through the tunnel toward the camera. 2 figures that looked exactly like us. Jake, my voice cracked. Look at the timestamp. He leaned in closer to the screen. The timestamp read 3 days ago, but we were looking at footage of us, right now, walking through the tunnel. That's impossible, Jake said, but his voice was shaking. The cameras must be malfunctioning or something. I was about to agree when I noticed something else. On the middle monitor, there was live footage of the main platform, and there were people on it. 3 figures in dark clothes, just standing there, watching the tunnel entrance we'd come through. Jake, I whispered, we need to leave, right now. But when I turned around, Jake was gone. I called his name, but my voice just echoed back at me. The humming sound was getting louder, and I could hear something else now. Footsteps, coming from deeper in the tunnel system. I grabbed Jake's camera from where he'd set it down and started backing toward the plastic sheet. That's when I saw the rest of the room. Behind the monitors, there were charts on the wall, photos, dozens of them, all showing different people in the tunnels. Young people, mostly urban explorers by the look of their gear. And at the bottom of each photo, there was a date and a price, like a fucking catalog. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. We were too deep, too far underground. I could hear voices now, coming from the main platform, speaking German, but quietly, like they were trying not to be heard. I managed to get Jake's camera working and started recording everything. The monitors, the photos, the whole sick setup. That's when I saw Jake on one of the screens. He was in a different room, somewhere else in the tunnel system, just sitting there. But something was wrong with his posture. Too still, too compliant, like he was sedated or something. I wanted to scream, but I bit down on my tongue until I tasted blood. The voices were getting closer, and I could see flashlight beams starting to bounce off the tunnel walls. I grabbed what I could, some of the photos, Jake's memory card, and started moving deeper into the tunnel system, away from the voices. There had to be another way out. There had to be. The next hour was a blur of wrong turns and dead ends. The tunnel system was huge, way bigger than any abandoned subway station should be. And everywhere I went, I could hear them behind me, not chasing exactly, but following, like they knew I couldn't really get away. I found a service ladder eventually, leading up to what looked like a utility access point. The metal was rusted, but it held my weight. I climbed up through about 20 feet of pitch black shaft and came out in the basement of what looked like an abandoned office building. I ran through the building, up the stairs, through the lobby, and out onto the street. It was dark by then, and the area was completely deserted. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road and could flag down a taxi. I went to the police, of course, showed them the photos, the video footage, everything. They took a statement, said they'd investigate. But when they went to check the location I gave them, they found nothing, just a locked door behind an old grocery store. And according to them, the lock looked like it hadn't been cut in years. Maybe you got confused about the location, the officer said. These old buildings, they all look the same. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what had happened to Jake. I kept digging, kept researching. And that's when I found the deep web forums. The kind of places you really don't want to know exist. Places where people pay money to watch things that shouldn't be watched. I found Jake 3 weeks later. He was on a live stream, broadcast from somewhere underground. Same clothes, same everything, but his eyes were different. Empty. Like he was there, but not there, if you know what I mean. The chat was full of people bidding on things I won't repeat here. But the timestamp on the stream showed it was happening in real time. Jake was still down there, still alive, still being used. I've been trying to trace the stream for 2 months now. It's hosted on servers that bounce around the globe, encrypted 6 ways from Sunday. But I keep watching, keep hoping I'll see something that'll help me find him. The worst part? I've started recognizing some of the other faces on the streams. People from the photos I took from that room. Urban explorers who went missing in Berlin, Prague, Budapest. All young, all naive, all thinking they were just going to film some cool abandoned places for their YouTube channels. They're all still down there, all still being used. And I'm starting to think that room, that setup, it wasn't the operation. It was just the recruiting office. The real thing, whatever it is deeper, bigger, more organized than I ever imagined. I can't go to the police anymore. Every time I try, I get the same response. We investigated, found nothing, case closed. But sometimes, when I'm walking around Berlin, I see people watching me. People who were definitely not there a second ago. People who look like they know exactly who I am and what I found. So here's the thing. I'm uploading this video with a dead man switch. If something happens to me, if I disappear like Jake did, this goes live on every platform I can reach, along with all the photos, all the footage, everything I've collected over the past 3 months. But I'm also uploading it as a warning. If you're into urban exploration, if you're planning to check out abandoned places in Eastern Europe, be careful. Really fucking careful. Because some of those forum posts, those grainy photos, those too good to be true locations, they might not be what they seem. They might be shopping catalogs. And if you're thinking about checking out Station 32 in Berlin, don't. Just don't. Because even if you think you're smarter than me and Jake, even if you think you'll be more careful, you won't be. Because they're not just hunting in the tunnels anymore. They're hunting online. They're in the forums, the Discord servers, the Reddit threads. They're studying us, learning what we want to see, what will make us curious enough to ignore our better judgment. They're getting better at the bait. And one day, they might come for you.